about 1970, something like that. I was about 18, 19 years of age, yeah. I was boxing before I went in prison. I was a bit young than that as well, you know. I was loving my boxing. And I used to train for the London Transport and also Hogarth Club. I used to train both clubs more or less different days. I used to love my training. So always run, always very fit, big boy, yeah. And I used to go down the pro gyms a lot to learn. Yeah, you learn a lot. So when I was in the professional gyms, like Haverstock Hill and I was always down there because George Whelan took me down. Now I think George Daly was the guy that ran it. Old George Daly. I'm not quite sure. I think it was George Daly. And I used to love that gym. Haverstock Hill, a right nice clean gym. Yeah. And I used to go there when Pat McCann was there. Pat McCann's manager was a guy called Bobby Neal. Bobby Neal loved me as an amateur. He wanted me to turn pro. George Wynne said, no, I'm not ready, but I always thought I was, even though it was a learning curve, isn't it? You're always learning all the time. I was getting better and better and better. I used to go down there with a guy called Fal McGew. We used to go down there by train, and, you know, it was good as young kids, yeah? Walking up the hill with a bag, you know, your gloves hanging on the outside of the bag. You thought, you know, big times, you know. It's lovely, man. Get in there and get in the ring with Fal and have a good spar with me and Fal. But I was very fit. I was also run miles and miles, yeah. And because I was so fit and getting so big, Fal was about 19, 20 stone. Big travelling fella, massive, yeah. And yeah, I was in the end, I used to bash him up, Fal. And I used to kick him out of the ring. He used to lay on the canvas and just kick him out of the ring, you know what I mean? It's good. He couldn't take them off, he just laid down, yeah. And Pat McCann, I had a lot of time with Pat, really liked Pat. Pat was a proper hard man, yeah. He come from Harrow, proper hard man. He weren't fighting no one, because they were right fight fell on the cobbles and in the ring, yeah. I used to spar with Billy Ed quite a lot. I like Bill. Bill taught me a lot. He was a good fighter, Bill, but he taught me a lot. The reason Bobby Neal, Pat McCann's manager, trainer, is that he wanted me to turn pro. The reason he wanted me to turn pro is because I also didn't mind who I got in the ring with, and Billy Ed was, you know, a European champion, a British champion. I'm not quite sure what it was, yeah. And I used to hold my own with Bill, yeah. And one day we was in the ring, and Bill, because he was teaching me a lot, one day, you know, we had a war. Me and Bill had a bit of a war, and I was very powerful, big kid, yeah. And we was powerful. I was powerful as anything. And I think Bill was about 20, 24, 23, 24. I was about 19, about 18, 19. And we had a right war in there, yeah. Obviously, I come second best, but I hit Bill on the chin with a left hook, crash, and he hit the floor, you know. And it was surprised me, surprised a lot of people. They couldn't believe it, you know. Bill got up and got into me and told me to behave myself, you know what I mean? But we had a real good sparring match. And about, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks after that, I was going regular. I was always up there weekends, Saturday, Sunday, always up there, beautiful, clean gym, but I was always there training really hard, yeah. One day I was up there and Bugner, Joe Bugner, I was thinking about 1970, something like that, and I was about 18, 19. I think Joe Bugner was about 21, something like that. But Joe Bugner looked older, bigger. He was 6'4", 6'5", big guy, very powerful looking, good tummy muscles, but powerful looking. Do you know, like really powerful looking guy? And you know, I see him sparring with Billy Ed, and Billy Ed held his own with him. You know, Billy Ed was like, you know, he isn't no fool, Bill. Bill really held his own with him, and Bugner was just like looking for people to spar with, and you know, I put my hands up to it. George Whelan, my trainer, he said, yeah, go on in, have a couple of rounds with him, just learn. And he took liberties with me a bit, Bugner. He took liberties with me a little bit, you know. It was a learning curve, but I suppose he was training for a fight. I suppose he just wanted to, you know, but he had a very flick. Bugner always flicked his punches. He didn't punch. It was a flick. Everything was flick. He used to flick punches at you rather than punch. You know, bump, flick. You know, nothing. No, look like big power flick. But he hit me. He hit me with the right hand, and oh, mate, I hit the canvas, mate. You know what I mean? He shook me up. You know, and that's it. That's enough. But he took the liberty, really, in a way. I was, you know, just a learning thing. But I suppose, in a way, it wasn't a liberty. You know, I was there to be hit, and I got hit, you know. But Pat McCann went mad. Pat McCann went crazy. Pat McCann wanted to bash him up. You know, Pat McCann's a bit nutty, you know what I mean? He could have a right fight in the street. I like people say, yeah, but Bugner was a big man, powerful man. But on the street, it was a little bit different. Pat was went mad anyway. But yeah, Joe Bugner, man. You know, I see pictures of him. You know, and rest in peace, Joe Bugner. And you know, I've got a lot of time for him, mate. Good fighter. You know, I know it's hard for when he fought to Henry Cooper. He was only 21, you know, when he fought Henry Cooper. That was around about the times that maybe that he used to spar with me when I was that young. I think he was 21. I think it must have been 19, 20, something like that, you know. When I sparred a couple of times with Joe, you know. But yeah, that was good, man. I liked to spar with him, even though he put me on my arse. It's a learning curve, isn't it? But Joe Bugner, mate, shame that he died, and it's a shame that he beat Henry Cooper like he did. The verdict was the right verdict. I watched that fight lots of times, yeah. It was the right verdict. All Henry had was a left hook. He had nothing else there to throw at Bugner. You know, if he made excuses that his right arm was a bit mucked up and he couldn't really throw punches, but all Henry really had, Henry Cooper, was a left hook. Fantastic left hook, you know what I mean? You know, but that's all he really had, you know. And I think he lost the fight because of that, you know, because he didn't really throw no other punches. It was only left hook, left hook, left hook all the time, you know. And I suppose Bugner, I thought Bugner had won 2 rounds, myself personally, you know, when I see it again. But yeah, but it's a shame that they run Bugner down. They didn't really, you know, let him train in gyms and all that game, and it was terrible, you know what I mean? That he beat Cooper, he got the belt, the Lonsdale belt, you know, and Henry Cooper, come on, you know, like, Henry made excuses about his right arm, but, you know, if you're a fighter, a good fighter like that, you know, and you beat everybody there is to be beat, British champions, you know, Jack Bodell, Billy Walker, Brian London, you know, all them sort of people. You beat all them, and you know, and you ain't said nothing about your right arm, and all of a sudden, Bugner beats you, and you start complaining about your right arm. You know, it's a bit below the belt. You know what I mean? But anyway, everybody loved Henry Cooper, didn't they? You know what I mean? But Bugner was up and coming, young kid, 21 years of age, mate. Yeah, mate, he was a good fighter. He fought Fraser, didn't he? He fought Clay. He fought Jimmy Ellis. He fought some good fighters, mate. He didn't back down. 15 rounds with Clay, you know. He done 15 rounds with Clay, Bugner. To do that is unbelievable. You know what I mean? Because Clay was a bit near the mark, you know what I mean? Anyway, look, he done to Cooper, Clay. You know what I mean? He smashed Cooper to pieces, didn't he, Henry Cooper? And Bugner, it was Bugner to go 15 rounds. You're not on about 10 or 12 rounds, you're on 15 rounds, mate. It's, you know, in them 15 rounds in them days, mate, you had to be a bit of a man to do that. Anyway, bang, bang, well, just as rest in peace, Joe Bugner. And it's nice to be able to say that I sparred with Joe Bugner, you know, at Haverstock Hill with an Overlord, you know, and Jules Daly that run it. My trainer, Brian Whelan, Brian Whelan and Bobby Neal, wish they was alive today, so you know. Billy Ed, I think Bill's alive. Bill's in a home, or people's home, I think, I'm not quite sure. But I'd love to be able to talk to Bill. Bill, remember that, if his memories together. Anyway, bang, 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 nice one.